The biggest money was in the transport, was getting the work, the pounds, out of state where they would get the highest prices. It's like selling cocaine in Colombia. It's extremely difficult, I'm sure, to make money selling retail bags of coke in Colombia because it's just simply too cheap. I remember buying coke myself when I was living in Colombia. I was in Cali. I bought a bag of 100% pure coke for like 10 pesos, which is like $1.50 American. So it's extremely difficult to make a living that way. As we know, the cartels make their money by shipping overseas, right? So a kilo of coke wholesale in Medellin costs 2,000 bucks. In LA, that'll cost you 30 grand. Make it all the way to Madrid, it could go for as high as 60 or 70,000. So the same methodology applied to our marijuana. So we knew we needed to figure out a way to get our pounds of weed to the states where it fetched the highest prices. And that was in the Midwest and on the East Coast, the places where it was the hardest to find good weed, and it was the hardest to find good weed at a wholesale price. So let's explain how we did it. So the first thing you got to do is go pick up the shit from the connect, the grower. We used 2 or 3 different growers at one time, and that was always good to have a couple of different guys who you could play different prices off of, right? Or if one guy was dry, didn't have any product, you could go to another guy. Also, by the end, as prices kept going down for wholesalers, a lot of them would meet us halfway. But normally, it was and I driving all the way down from Portland, Oregon to the small towns of Northern California. That's about an 8 to 10 hour drive, depending on which town and which supplier we were going to. If we were lucky, we would get these guys to drive down from the forest, from their little fucking compounds, and meet us in these little towns, Arcata, Crescent City. We would bring down anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000, depending on what the order was. To place the orders, we always used burner phones, or bat phones, they called them back then. And we never used it more than a couple of times before throwing it away. I remember we had a couple of stash houses in Portland with Ziploc baggies filled with old burner phones. So we would get on the horn, we would call up one of our suppliers, and we would get the ticket, as we called it. We'd say, what's the ticket on one of those things? What was the price? He would give us the price. We would call up another guy, almost like we were calling around to an auto parts store trying to find the best price. We would then let them know, hey, we need whatever. Say we needed 30 pieces for that day. We would make sure that our supplier had that, and then we would set up a meet for the following day. Now, the entire process would take all day. We would wake up at the crack of dawn, leave Portland, drive all the way down I-5, then get onto a tiny little highway called the 22, down to the very tip of Northern California. And then if we were lucky, we would have one of these guys, our suppliers, drive down from the forest in Humboldt County or up from Mendocino and meet us, usually in like a little hotel room. They would call up, have a room ready. We would bring duffel bags full of cash, and we would start the count. And we would check the weed, we would check the pounds, we would put them, double wrap them in turkey bags to make them smell proof. But you got to remember, a canine dog is going to smell it. It ain't stopping a fucking canine who's trained to smell weed. This was just to make ourselves feel better at the end of the day. It was also to prevent the smell from actually permeating the trunk where we kept the load and having it come into the cabin in case a cop pulled us over and ducked his nose in, right? So say we place a 30-pound order and we're paying $2,000 a piece. So we got 60 grand cash on us. We have no weapons. It doesn't work that way. By now, we're so entrenched with our connects that we're actually friends. When you bring somebody several $million a year in cash, you very quickly develop a tight relationship with them. And that's important. I love dealing with the Sinaloans. I love dealing with the Mexican cartels. You know, you think it'd be some scary thing working with guys who are cutting people's heads off back home. But up here, it don't work like that. These guys are all about money. So we would meet one of these kids. It was always like some 19-year-old and his little compadre, and they would get going. Now, one of them had a gun. Of course, they could have robbed us, but, you know, we're their meal ticket. They're smart. They're business-oriented. I loved dealing with the Sinaloans. So they would count out the money. They would count it twice. Sometimes could take a couple of hours. then we would shake hands and we would be off. Hey guys, if you like that video, be sure to check out the full-length episode right here. All right, we'll see you later.